now.
I'm all about the awkward silences. Like my life.
Hey folks, we're just given a few moments here at the top for Zoom to let everybody in before we get started with tonight's event. If you are already in tonight's webinar with us, feel free to open up your chat window. Let us know where you're Zooming in from. Hello from Silver Springs and congrats to the debutantes. And you can also open up that chat window and find some information about how to purchase the books by all of tonight's debutantes here from Greenlight. Good evening and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Chelsea from Greenlight, and we are thrilled to host tonight's event, an evening with the 2022 one-story literary debutantes. This annual event celebrates one-story authors who have published their first books in the past year. And this year's edition features authors Omer Friedlander, Michelle Hart, Gwen E. Kirby, Lydia Conklin, Kate Folk, Amina Ahmed, and Arinze Ifeakandu. And Hannah Tinty of One Story will be your host and MC tonight. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Hannah, all our featured authors, Lena Valencia, and everyone at One Story for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make this space for conversation and connection. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they cannot see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. That's a great way to show your appreciation for the authors and to interact with your fellow attendees. And importantly, tonight's featured books are all available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. at both our Fulton Street and Flatbush app stores, or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. And I will drop those buy links in the chat. As thanks for attending tonight's virtual event, we are offering 10% off the featured books. Enter coupon code GreenlightEvents10 into the coupon discount section at checkout online for 10% off. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured books is a great way to show your support. Your host and MC tonight is Hannah Tinty. Hannah is the author of the best-selling novel, The Good Thief, which won the Center for Fiction's first Novel Prize, and the story collection, Animal Crackers, a runner-up for the PEN Hemingway Award. Her latest novel, The 12 Lives of Samuel Hawley, is a national bestseller and is in development for television with Netflix. She teaches creative writing at New York University's MFA program and co-founded the Sirenland Writers Conference. Tinty is also the co-founder and executive editor of One Story magazine. Hannah, please take it away.
Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you all. I'm Hannah Tinty. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Greenlight, for hosting us. It's nice to be back, even in this like virtual way, but actually virtual allows all of our devs to be here tonight, which is really exciting. And I'm so happy. I've just been watching the chat and watching all these people pop up. We've got past debutantes who are logged in. We've got some future debutantes and people who will be debutantes next year logging in. We've got staff from One Story, readers from One Story, fans, just like great folks here. So, so welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. And as Chelsea said, one thing I find that's really great about virtual events is like you can just like as you're listening, like share your favorite lines or just say like love that image or whatever, and just kind of like have a conversation on the side in the chat room. It's really nice, and then it's also fun for the authors to go through and actually see what people were, you know, kind of responding to as they were reading. So Please be active, join, let us know what you like. So yes, I am one of the co-founders of One Story Magazine, which looks like this if you've never seen it before. Here it is. It's a beautiful magazine. We publish one short story at a time. And I'm not going to talk too much about One Story, but I will drop a link in our chat for those of you who want to know more. One of the rules of One Story when we started it was we decided to only publish authors once. We're the only lit mag that has that rule. And one of the reasons why I felt that was really important when we started was that I felt that some magazines, which are, you know, really great, but like they kind of publish the same people over and over again. And while that can kind of create a whole like style or form or kind of like point of view for that magazine, that with One Story, we felt like we wanted One Story to always be an open door to all different kinds of voices, all different kinds of people, and to never feel like a clique. And it put also the weight on us. Like it was our job to always be looking for new voices, for looking for the next big thing, to looking for, you know, new talent. And tonight we are going to be showcasing some of that talent. These are amazing writers that we had the honor to run stories by, and now they have all recently in the past year or even this week or just at the start of next week, publishing their very first books. So we're going to hear from each of them for just a few minutes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why they're each so special. So our first reader tonight is actually someone who couldn't be here live. So he sent us because he's on book tour because his book just came out, Omer Friedlander. So I'll read you a little bit about Omer, and then Chelsea's going to help us with a little video that Omer sent us to take part in tonight's event. So Omer Friedlander is the author of The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land. He was born in Jerusalem in 1994 and grew up in Tel Aviv. He earned a BA in English Literature from the University of Cambridge, England, and an MFA from Boston University, where he was supported by the Saul Bellow Fellowship. His short stories have won numerous awards and been published in the United States, Canada, France, and Israel. A Starworks Fellow in Fiction at New York University. He earned a Breadloaf Work Study Scholarship, as well as a fellowship from the Vermont Studio Center, and he currently lives in New York City. In his starred review, Kirkus had this to say about Omer's stories. Friedlander's skillfully crafted, imagistic prose captivates and soars. With this collection, Friedlander positions himself as poised to join a formidable cadre that includes such writers as David Grossman and Etgar Keret. So we were lucky enough to publish a short story from his current book called The Miniaturist, and here it is. Chelsea, help us bring Omer into the room.
Hi, my name is Omer Friedlander. I'm the author of the debut story collection, The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land. I'll read the opening of a short story called The Miniaturist. I arrived at the Ma'abara refugee absorption camp set up in the newly established state of Israel in the winter of 1950, in the midst of the greatest snowstorm of the century. Together with my parents and 4 older brothers, I trudged through the thick, powdery snow, an endless flurry of white flakes, watching figures emerge from the pale mist, silhouettes misshapen by everything they carried, all their lifelong possessions rolled up in rags, bundled in wool and fur, tied together with strips of string, stuffed into worn leather valises. We were all wanderers, ghostly apparitions plucked out of thin air like black sunflowers, searching for a place to lay down roots. My family came only with the clothes on our backs and a laissez-passer, a one-way travel document. 6 of the 7 suitcases we'd shipped got lost on the way. We were checked for lice, our bodies sprayed with insecticide to prevent the spread of malaria and typhus. Our congested tent city, housing thousands of immigrants, stretched across the coastal plain from Mount Carmel to the east all the way to the sea in the west. We lived about 1 kilometer away from the water, but we could never visit the beach. A barbed wire fence encircled the tent city, and we couldn't cross its perimeter without permission from the authorities. We were confined to a small patch of land and left to fend for ourselves. Our canvas tent was hut-shaped, identical to all the others, except for a unique number painted in white on the front flap, 244. We unpacked our one remaining suitcase and arranged our meager possessions inside the tent. On the floor, we spread out a precious carpet patterned with pomegranates and hummingbirds. On the tent flap wall, we hung a family photograph, all 7 of us standing by the dome of Imamzadeh Ismail Mausoleum. My parents kept their tuba marriage certificate under their straw mattress. We slept on a metal frame bed, our blankets crawling with fleas. We were never told exactly how long we would stay in the tent city, only that it was temporary. Our day-to-day was always the same, wandering listlessly between filthy puddles of sewage and waste, standing in line for food tokens, showers, and toilets, sitting on empty orange crates, waiting and waiting, forever waiting to leave. It was in the beginning of spring that I first met Estelle. The winter storms had finally passed, and a stifling humidity settled over the tent city. Rock rose and thorny broom covered the slope of Mount Carmel in the distance. Estelle stood alone in a barren field, like a rare flower blooming in an empty landscape. She was without a doubt more beautiful than me. Her most distinctive feature was her huge bluish-green peacock feather eyes and long dark lashes. She was wearing a midnight blue taffeta dress. The late afternoon light illuminated the blonde hairs on her cheek, her graceful neck, and braided black hair. Her ears were pierced with tiny silver hoops. I felt ugly and worthless by comparison. Instead of girls' clothing, I wore my older brother's hand-me-downs, dirt brown shorts, and a striped collared shirt. My ears were bare. My knees were scabby, my fingernails dirty. My skin was itchy, and my long hair hung in tangled clumps, unwashed for days. She was special, gem-like, gold-dusted. I was dull, ordinary as a handful of carob seeds. Thank you.
Yay! Omer in absentia. So tomorrow night we'll be hanging out with Omer in person when we have our one-story literary debutante ball, which is our annual fundraiser. We'll post a link if you want to know more about that event. It's happening in Brooklyn, New York, and all of our debutantes will be marched down the aisle and presented to literary society in a very tongue-in-cheek but fun way. So our next reader is going to be Amina Ahmed, who is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. She's received a Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University, a Pushcart Prize, and a Rona Jaffe Writers Award. Her short fiction has appeared in One Story, The Southern Review, Ecotone, and elsewhere. She is also the author of a play, The Dishonored. She lives in Berkeley, California. And the New York Times calls her first novel, The Return of Faraz Ali, stunning, not only on account of the author's talent, of which there is clearly plenty, but also in its humanity. The fullness of the characters and their intersecting lives make this far more than a murder mystery. Ahmed's compassion, her deep care for the psychological and emotional nuances of her characters never wavers. It extends through generations and transformations of place, all the way to a devastating final chapter, fully human, fully engaged with what makes us human. So help me welcome Amina Ahmad to the stage. Amina, take it away.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. I'm so happy to get to read today. I'm just going to read from the prologue of The Return of Faraz Ali, which is here. Lahore, February 1943. It was said, or so he had been told, Fatima, beloved daughter of the Prophet, had not felt the heat of the fire as she stirred a pot of simmering halwa with her hand. She didn't feel the burning sugar climbing her arm, darkening to the color of her skin. Such was her grief. He didn't know the rest of the story. No one had remembered to tell him what sorrow had made Fatima more powerful than the fire, but he thought of her when his mother held up her hand to stop the men who came for him. She pushed him through the doorway behind her and called up to his sister, who knew exactly what to do. Rosina pulled him up the steep staircase to the roof. Then she let go of his hand to jump across the narrow gap between their roof and their neighbors. The terraces stretched behind her into the distance. She turned to him. Jump, jump, she said. How many times had he watched his sister and her friends hop from roof to roof till they disappeared? He wasn't sure he could do it. He was only 5 years old. Rosina made it look so easy, but he struggled to keep up with her. She was stronger, faster, always faster than him. Don't look down, just step across, she said. She held out her hand. Down below, he heard his mother screeching. A crowd of women had gathered around her. Others leaned over their balconies. They yelled at the men to leave her alone. They called out to God because God sees everything, and there had to come a time, his mother always said, that God would give you what you needed if you just kept asking. Voices rose around him. Others fell away. God hears you, sister. God hears you. His mother looked up. She was searching for him. The strangers looked up too. He heard them push open the door below. Jump, jump, Rosina said. Go on, Baba, go on, a voice called from a terrace somewhere. The terraces, the balconies were dotted with people now. The women had abandoned their washing, the boys their kites. The girls climbed onto their charpais for a better view. Some stared, but mostly they shouted, their hands beckoning to him. Jump, jump, they're coming. Their voices were sharp in the cold air. Rosina held out her hand. Faraz, now, now. And he thought of the amulets that decorated the whole of the mohalla, its walls and shops and doorways, delicate silver hands, Fatima's hand, a hand that feared nothing, not even fire. Take it, Rosina said. And so he did. The boys whistled and the women praised God, their fingers pointing to the sky as Rosina dragged him from roof to roof. And the men who had come for him could do nothing but watch because the whole of the mohalla had come out to protect him, and nothing was bigger than the mohalla. 6 months later, they came back, the same men. And this time, his mother invited them in and gave them tea, and then told him to sit with them. The men didn't say much, but when they got up to leave, she told him he had to go with them, that he would be back soon. It didn't seem possible that his Amma would lie to him, that she would not want him back. So he let one of the men carry him downstairs to the tanga waiting around the corner. This time, no one came out to watch. An old woman stared at them from a balcony, but she said nothing. He smelled smoke and iron in the air and the musky scent of the man who held him. He waited for his mother and his sister, who had followed them downstairs to wave goodbye, but they didn't. His mother went back inside the kota and called for Rosina to follow her. She didn't watch as he disappeared around the corner. He knew then they would not bring him back, just as he knew his Amma's sorrow had not made her powerful. It had not, he realized, made her remarkable in any way at all. Thanks.
Amina, that was amazing. I feel like I got to do snaps for that one. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So beautiful. All right. So I posted in the chat the link to the one-story debutante ball, which actually has information and links to all these authors and to their websites and more information about each of them and their books. So please check it out. Our next reader is going to be Lydia Conklin. So Lydia has received a Stegner Fellowship, a Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, 3 Pushcart Prizes, a Creative Writing Fulbright in Poland, a grant from the Elizabeth George Foundation, a Creative Writing Fellowship from Emory University, Work Study and Tuition Scholarships from Breadloaf, and fellowships from McDowell, Yaddo, Hedgebrook, Jurassic, and the James Merrill House, and elsewhere. Their fiction has appeared in Tin House, American Short Fiction, the Paris Review, One Story, and VQR. They have drawn cartoons for The New Yorker and Narrative Magazine, graphic fiction for The Believer, RIP, but maybe not so much RIP anymore, hopefully resurrected. Lenny Letter and the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago. Last year, they served as the Helen Zell Visiting Professor in Fiction at the University of Michigan, and they are currently an Assistant Professor of Fiction at Vanderbilt University. Their story collection, Rainbow Rainbow, was just released this week by Catapult in North America and Scribner in the UK. So here's what Jamel Brinkley had to say about their collection. Rainbow Rainbow is a debut that many of us have long been waiting for. The sentences in this collection leap off the page with delightfully vivid animation, and the queer and trans characters in each story take journeys that cover a breathtaking range of emotional distance. Lydia Conklin, above all, understands the power of humor to surprise and tickle us, to regale and disarm us, and in the end, to devastate us with truths that are full of mystery and melancholy. So help me welcome Lydia Conklin to the stage.
Yay, thanks Hannah, and thanks everyone for coming. I'm gonna read the beginning of my story, Sunny Talks, that was in one story from Rainbow. Hunched over my computer in my cubicle, I prepare for my nephew's visit by watching one of his YouTube videos. His backdrop is his bedroom, the walls painted black, centaur and mermaid posters freshly hung. His mascots, he calls them. He pops into the frame, flaunting his naked, scar-free chest. He's 15, but looks 10. His wrists are so frail, his shoulders so narrow, that I worry that he'll break his arms with his eager, sweeping gestures. His audience is 10 or 20,000 people who litter his page with rainbow emojis, kissing emojis, shining sun emojis, interrupted by trolls reminding him he's a damaged and mutilated female. Welcome to Sunny's channel. He rolls his eyes like everyone knows already. Sunny was always his name, so when people threaten to publish his real name, he has a laugh, thrusting his head back against the wall of his bedroom, which is beside my older sister's bedroom in their little house in Shrewsbury, though Sunny doesn't reveal where he dispatches from. He's learned from millennial elders on the platform at least the basics of safe internet practices. He lifts the rabbit my sister bought him and holds it to the camera, pink pad swelling to blot out the screen. The rabbit died a few months after this video of nose cancer. My assistant, Sunny says, Almond Sr. He bounces the rabbit's haunches, pronouns they, them. He snorts. Almond Sr.'s non-binary. The rabbit's cute, cancer-filled nose presses against Sunny's cute little boy nose. So trendy now, aren't you? I pull back from the screen into the green light of the office. I've watched the video a dozen times, awaiting this moment, my breath so quick it's audible, perking my ears for Sunny's tone. Is the joke that the rabbit has an identity, or is the joke that the identity is non-binary? Sunny crops the frame at his waist as though he had hips to hide. He updates his perspective regularly on crucial queer Gen Z issues such as pansexuality, passing privilege, cisnormativity, he/him lesbians, PGPs, chasers, and demi-romanticism. He applies gel to his hair so it crests sweetly over his forehead, a neighbor boy from a 50s sitcom. I live hundreds of miles from Sunny now, but this evening my sister will drop him at my apartment in Trenton. Tomorrow, Sunny and I will attend a convention of trans YouTubers in Philadelphia. Sunny invited me a few weeks back, explaining that it wasn't cool to go with his mom, that he preferred me, his aunt, which is fishy because he loves my sister, but I guess everyone grows up sometime. Last week, he sent a video message of himself singing Streets of Philadelphia with a plastic bell, the crack drawn on in Sharpie, nested in his soft disc of hair, and a portrait of Ben Franklin taped to the wall behind. I pat my blouse to absorb the sweat from my palms. Tonight, I'll discuss my identity with Sunny, tell him what's been true my whole life, though only now is there language for it. I hate to burden a kid with my issues, but he's the only trans person I know. The write-up, Eric says, looming over my desk. My colleagues don't look directly at me, as though I could infect them through the eyes. But I hold out hope that Eric could become a friend. He visits my desk instead of emailing me. His earring is either queer or cheesy, same with his spiked, thinning hair. Once I'm more comfortable in my body, I'll ask him for a drink at the sports bar. I pinch the report from my printer tray and clap it into a folder. Eric snatches the file as though I'll change my mind. Thank you.
Like the silent clapping that's happening. Thank you, Lydia. That was fantastic. That was so great. You know, and it reminds me, it's so great. Thanks for, reading from Sunny Talks. One of the cool things about One Story is like, we are actually just like our name, just simply one story. So it was this idea that started with Mary Beth Bacha, who I founded the magazine with. And And she's like, there's something really special about reading a story just by itself, like not part of a collection, not part of a larger anthology, and just sort of seeing it as a standalone work of art. And that's one of the reasons also why the magazine is sort of a little bit different than what everybody else is doing. And at the same time, it has this very handmade, zine-y feel, which it literally was when we started. We were Xeroxing it and stapling and mailing it out from our apartments for a very long time. It was just sort of this love project, that we started, and now we're this whole thing that's been around for a while. So it's just great to get back to that. But all right, we're gonna move on. We are going to Kate Folk. Kate is the author of Out There, a collection of stories released just this year by Random House. She's the recipient of a Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University. She's written for publications including The New Yorker, The New York Times Magazine, Granta, Zizova, and of course, One Story. She lives in San Francisco. Here's what prize-winning author Chang-Rae Lee had to say after reading Out There. I love this quote. One could fancy Kate Folk as the literary love child of Kafka and Camus and Bradbury. If Kafka and Camus and Bradbury were penning episodes of Black Mirror, but that still wouldn't capture the blazing originality and exhilarating weirdness of her writing. From the moment you read these wonderfully perverse, often creepy and hilarious, and always sneakily heartbreaking tales, you'll know you're in the presence of a singularly brilliant vision. So help me welcome Kate Folk.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and thanks to everyone at One Story. I'm really excited for the ball tomorrow. So I'm going to read a 5-minute story. It's called Dating a Somnambulist. One night, your boyfriend sleepwalks to the kitchen and brings a handful of M&Ms back to bed. You wake to bleary chocolate splotches on the sheets. You're annoyed because they're your nicest sheets. Your boyfriend says he'll buy a replacement set with a similarly high thread count. This makes you feel better. It's kind of cute, after all, that your boyfriend eats M&Ms in his sleep. Each morning you wake to a new object, a pine cone, a snow globe, a plastic lawn goose. On the 5th night, something soft and warm tickles your calves. In your fumbling dream state, you think it's the black cat you had as a child. Her name was Midnight, and she liked to hang out under the covers. You lift the sheet to pet Midnight, but the furry mass turns out to be the raccoon you've seen rooting through bins in the trash atrium. The raccoon bites your finger, then scurries into the closet. While you wait in the emergency room for a tetanus shot, your boyfriend agrees to go to a sleep clinic. The clinic is blue-walled, piped through with piano music. The doctor is a small, nervous man with white hair and wide, dewy eyes. He asks your boyfriend pointed questions about his somnambulism, a fancy word for doing weird shit in your sleep. He prescribes your boyfriend drugs to deepen his slumber. You're both in good spirits on the drive home. You hope the drugs will fix everything. The next morning, the sleep clinic doctor is nestled in bed between you and your boyfriend. The doctor is bound and gagged, his moist blue eyes blinking up at you. Your boyfriend must have sleepwalked to the car, sleep driven to the doctor's house, and sleep kidnapped the doctor. Presumably, he first had to sleep look up the doctor's address. Your boyfriend allows you to shackle him to the bed frame with handcuffs, but he winds up sleep picking the lock with an unfolded paperclip like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. On the 7th morning, you wake to a brand new microwave. From the receipt taped to its side, you learn that your boyfriend sleep drove to the 24-hour Walmart and sleep chose the model of microwave that would best suit your needs. You're still disturbed, but pleased that you now have an easy way to heat up leftovers. On the 8th morning, you wake hugging a famous urn from the Asian Art Museum. You've seen pictures of this urn on the sides of buses. You are worried about the criminal implications of the sleep museum burglary and suggest that your boyfriend stay at his own tiny windowless apartment until his somnambulism settles down. Your boyfriend admits that he started renting it out on Airbnb since he's always at your place anyway. A middle-aged German couple is presently staying there. Additional European couples have booked the apartment through July. On the 9th morning, the bed appears empty. You and your boyfriend celebrate by heating frozen mini quiches in the new microwave. But when you make the bed, you discover, tangled in the sheets, a highly venomous box jellyfish native to the tropical Indo-Pacific. Your boyfriend puts on yellow rubber gloves, removes the dead jellyfish, and feeds it into the garbage disposal. On the 10th morning, you wake to frantic nudges from your great aunt Renetta. You haven't seen her in 15 years. She is disoriented and upset. You take her to dim sum, show her your city, then buy her a plane ticket back to Pennsylvania. Your boyfriend finally remembers to pick up his sleep prescription at Walgreens, but the drugs only make his nightly acquisitions more bizarre. An airplane flight recorder, battered and corroded by seawater. The slash silver top worn by model Gisele Bundchen in Alexander McQueen's groundbreaking spring 1998 fashion show. 3 passports of Americans born on August 18th, 1973. On the 14th morning, you wake to a wormhole squirming at the center of your mattress. Lord knows where your boyfriend sleep acquired a hypothetical future of space-time, but there it is, a roiling purplish vortex the approximate diameter of a basketball. You climb out of bed, careful not to touch the wormhole's iridescent rim. You and your boyfriend spend the rest of the day sealing the bed and its wormhole in a wooden box. While you build the box, you drop tools and planks of wood into the wormhole. You imagine these objects will pop out in a parallel universe and prove useful to parallel versions of yourselves. You imagine your parallel self is like you, but better. She probably bakes gluten-free pastries that taste just like the real thing. She probably makes her own dresses and has a killer record collection. You consider jumping into the wormhole and emerging in a universe where your boyfriend doesn't bring terrifying things to bed in his sleep. But the parallel boyfriend might have some other, even more upsetting defect, such as snoring. So for now, you stay where you are, in a sleeping bag on the floor, waiting for your boyfriend to sleep ferry home another object that will make you shudder at the arcane puzzle of your own existence. Thank you.
Oh, that was great. Kafka, Camus, and Bradbury indeed. Thanks, Kate. That was fantastic. Our next reader is Michelle Hart. Michelle Hart's fiction has appeared in Joyland, One Teen Story, and Electric Literature, and she's written nonfiction for Catapult, Nylon, The Rumpus, and The New Yorker Online. Previously, she was the assistant books editor at O, the Oprah magazine, and Oprah Daily. She received her MFA from Rutgers Newark and lives in New Jersey. What We Do in the Dark is her first novel, and here's what the New York Times had to say about the book. Hart has written a realistic world where women do all the talking to each other and rarely about the men in their lives. We do what we do in the dark. We do what we do in the dark is erotic and devastating. The writing always crackles, written by someone who clearly knows what it's like to desire another woman in ways you just barely understand. So please help me welcome Michelle Hart.
Hi, thank you so much. I know that book is a mouthful. It's called We Do What We Do in the Dark, and it's been out for about a month now, and I'm going to read the first few pages of it. When Mallory was in college, she had an affair with a woman twice her age. When the woman was 17, she herself had had an affair with a man in his 40s. Mallory admired the woman so much that, for many years, any similarity between them flattered her. Mallory had run on the treadmill behind the woman at the university's gym for weeks before they actually met. It was September of her freshman year. Mallory, whose mother had died months before, had become haunted by the prospect of poor health. Also, she was a first-year student and worried about letting something free, like a gym membership, go to waste. The school's main gym was in the midst of renovations. A crude, makeshift workout area now occupied one half of the intramural basketball court. This was separated from the other half by a large mesh curtain. The treadmills and weightlifting equipment were laid atop a foundation of cardboard flooring so as not to scuff the hardwood underneath. It was a squalid, airless space, almost like a hospital, with nowhere pleasing to look. Mallory felt drawn to the woman the first time she saw her. The woman had walked into the gym wearing a loose-fitting tank top so slack it billowed as she moved. She carried an alluring sadness about her, with dark pouches under her eyes that seemed to hold a lot of weariness and wisdom. The woman's facial expression dramatized the solitude Mallory herself felt inside. The woman wore it well, and as her shirt lifted from her body, Mallory saw the woman's melancholy as an invitation, a shared space for the two of them. Tied to the woman's wrist was a small folded towel, and when the woman stepped onto the treadmill, she unwound it, draping it over the machine's control panel so the buttons and the time were hidden. She worked out on her own internal clock, without headphones, intensely focused and free of distraction. As the woman ran, Mallory looked from her shoulder blades, which Mallory's mother had always called wings, to her ass. The woman had a body that was taut and muscular. It was the kind of body that seemed like it would never be stricken by illness. The woman, Mallory learned, went to the gym at the same time every day. She ran 3 miles in 24 minutes. In that period, Mallory could hardly run too, but she found watching the woman made the time tick heedlessly. Seeing how fit the woman was, Mallory began to eat healthier. Instead of a bagel at breakfast, she had a banana or some yogurt. Instead of a sandwich for lunch, she ate a salad. By the end of her first month away at school, she'd burned off most of the baby fat she still carried with her. After 18 years of avoiding her reflection, or else being preoccupied by its abject homeliness, she now stood for long, surreptitious spells in the front of the mirror in the communal bathroom with her shirt hiked up. The university Mallory attended was on Long Island. The campus, a 45-minute train ride from Manhattan, lay between 2 towns, one said to be seedy, the other considered posh. The bad part had the bars, where some of the students went on weekends since they were within walking distance. The good, which was harder to access without a car, had the manicured lawns of the professors' homes. The college was mostly a commuter school, and on nights and weekends, it was as if 2/3 of the students simply vanished, like the rapture. Lacking both a car and an interest in bars, Mallory felt at once claustrophobic and isolated, a feeling with which she'd been familiar for most of her life. She'd hoped college would be different. Her body vibrated with potential energy, but walking to and from her classes, she saw the sprawling campus as indifferent to her. She had the perpetual feeling of sneezing without being blessed. Other than her roommate, whose name was Joy, Mallory hadn't made any new friends. Together, their dorm room was a pair of Greek theater masks, Joy on one side, Mallory on the other. Joy had come to the college to study drama. She had the looks and the disposition for acting. Many things she did seemed dramatic. When she spoke or ate, she obscured her mouth with the back of her hand. When she read, she sometimes shut the book and bit into its jacket. When she watched shows on her laptop, she blinked rapidly and forcefully, as if she was wincing or willing something into happening, like Barbara Eden in I Dream of Jeannie. Joy had spent most of their first few weeks at school preparing to audition for the school's play. She rehearsed monologues from Shakespeare and her favorite films. Some of these she performed for Mallory, but she didn't get a part. This devastated her, and for days after her audition, she became withdrawn. During this time, Mallory felt embarrassed on both of their behalf. The humiliation of a ruined dream was too acute, and Mallory felt incapable of consoling her. Time passed, however, and Joy declared that the following semester she would just study pre-law. The courtroom was a different kind of theater, she said, and one that paid much better. Her tossing aside an old life so easily brought Mallory comfort. A new one might be waiting for her, too. Thank you.
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. We do what we do in the dark. We do what we do in the dark. It's not only a great title, it is a fantastic title, but it also makes me think about what it's like to be a writer, right? Because I feel like we do what we do in the dark too. You know, we're like alone and isolated, and we're all kind of introverts who like being mostly alone and in our own heads. But sort of one of the cool things about nights like this is we get a chance to kind of step out of that sort of seclusion and connect with each other and connect with readers and just kind of feel that. Because I think for me personally, I'm also an introvert, but like I connect with people through writing, right? Not only through like my own writing, it helps me like understand myself a little bit more, and what I'm going through. But then when you share it with the world, it ends up opening these doors and like creating this really cool community. And the longer that I'm part of this lit world, and especially part of one story, it makes me realize that actually that ends up being super valuable. A huge important part of my life is the community that One Story has created for me. And I'm very happy that all of you are a part of that community now too. So, all right, we're moving on. We are going to Arinze Ifeakandu. So Arinze Ifeakandu was born in Kano, Nigeria, and currently lives in Tallahassee, Florida, an AKO Kane Prize for African Writing finalist and a public space writing fellow. He is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. His work has appeared in or is forthcoming from A Public Space, Guernica, The Kenyon Review, Plowshares, One Story, Redemption Song, and Other Stories. The Kane Prize for African Writing in 2018. God's Children Are Little Broken Things is his first book. It publishes next week, next Tuesday, everyone, so mark it on your calendars. And here's what the author, Adam Hazlitt, had to say after reading this collection. These are brilliant stories, heartbroken but pulsing with life, wise but never cynical, and soaked in an atmosphere so convincing, it's like being inside a great album. The prose alone is worth the price of the ticket, as lush as it is exact, but through it comes whole worlds of longing and travail, youth and aging, queer love expressed in so many of its facets. Arinze Ifeakandu is a major talent, and God's Children Are Little Broken Things is a seriously good book. So help me welcome Arinze.
Hey. Wow, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here and to see everybody's face. So I'm going to be reading from The Dreamer's Litany, which was published by One Story. I'll be starting like somewhere in the middle. The hotel in Sabongari was tall, at least 10 stories, and seemed to be made entirely of shiny, glossy steel. It stood alone on a street corner, took up, in fact, the entire street corner. It was placed for privacy, Chief had said, but it roused in Awal an image of a child forgotten on a playground. Chief spread his arms in a theatrical show of ownership. My newest shop. And Awal thought how different Chief was, how he had slipped into a different persona. He was no longer the small, almost pathetic man who knelt on the dirty floor in Awal's shop, fumbling in the darkness. He owned things, ran things, and when he walked into the lobby, bright and white with light, young men and women in orange shirts scattered in all directions, suddenly becoming busy. He walked with a swagger, Awal beside him. He would never return here, Awal thought, because of how out of place he felt, because of how the eyes that burned behind them as soon as they had walked past felt hot with knowing, with sickened, hostile knowing. But he returned. Every other night. He returned to smoke by the window, naked, and listen to the city shake off its last flickers of life. The city was like a drunken man. It wobbled, garrulous and loud, and then a moment came when it tempered into a fitful somberness, slipping finally into a long, exhausted sleep. He loved it by that window on the top floor, had found that spot on the first night, when Chief brought out a cigarette and said, "You want?" And he thought, why not? A ritual small and inconsequential. Watching the lights go out in all those windows, Awal often imagined the bodies that came alive in the darkness, wondered if they burned with love. There was nothing loving in what he did with Chief. Every time their bodies came together, Awal would reach out to grasp something intimate, but always it slipped away. In the beginning, he would lean in to kiss Chief because it was what lovers did, but always Chief turned his face away, saying, "I don't like to kiss." So that Awal was offered his neck, a neck he attacked with a sinking in his stomach and anger growing in his heart. This attack fired in Chief a wanton eagerness, so that his lips burst into loud, obscene cries. "This is not the sort of surrender I long for," Awal wanted to say. Outside the window tonight, a light precipitation fell, making the air soft. Awal wanted to hold Chief, wanted to be held by him. If he moved away from the window and went to his phone on the dresser, he would see the 5 missed calls from Miriam he had been counting. But he did not want to go home tonight and look her in the face and lie that he had been at the shop all along, or that he had been hanging out with the other shop owners after closing. "Awal," Chief drawled, as though from a land of dreams. Owl turned and faced him. He, too, was naked, lying on the bed on his stomach, his chin propped up by his hands. He was staring at Owl. A light of contentment shone on his face, and it made Owl happy to think that he was the reason for this contentment. You know why I like you, Chief said. Why? Chief smiled, his eyes traveling round Owl's body, from his feet to his thighs, lingering on his dick, fluttering back up his chest before settling on his face. Because you be beasts, he said, and Owl thought how the edge in his voice could cut metal, how it cut him. You. He waved his hand in a motion that took in the totality of Owl. You be like wild animal. He laughed, a short offhand laugh, and you dey fuck like wild animal. Owl stared at him, at the light dusting of hair on his back, at his face, his beard that looked soft and shiny black. What do you mean, I be like wild animal, he said. Chief shrugged, as though he did not understand what Owl was talking about and could not be bothered. He rolled off the bed and strode toward the bathroom, his hairless buttocks making small yo-yo movements. He was always that way, present but not quite, going from one phone call to another, forgetting Owl. Owl did not wait for Chief to return from the bathroom before snatching his clothes from the floor and the furniture, before slinking into them and leaving. He did not look at the receptionist, even though he could feel the boy's eyes on him, full of scorn and suspicion. Outside the hotel, he stood for long minutes, watching the cars driving into the compound and the people spilling out of them, men with women who looked too young to be their wives and too clingy to be their daughters. A red jeep pulled in and a man in jeans and a white shirt jumped down, yawning and stretching. The car's other doors flung open, a boy emerging, as well as a woman in shorts, her face, though exhausted, shining with a simple beauty. And yet it was on the man that Owl's eyes became glued, the man who had paused what he was doing, pulling out travel bags from the trunk to squat and listen to what his son was saying. He threw his head back and laughed, a crystalline sound that made Owl think of shattering glass. The boy looked confused, and then he burst into ear-splitting wails. Sorry, the man mouthed, looking chastened, pulling the boy to himself and rubbing his back. The woman stood there, smiling down at them, and Owl felt something inside him leap, a small, impersonal joy. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Arinze. That's fantastic. God's Children Are Little Broken Things coming out on Tuesday. So please check it out. And also Arinze will be back at Greenlight next week as well with Brandon Taylor. So you can return to Greenlight for that event as well. So something that we often say at One Story after you publish with us is like, we say, welcome to the family. Which might seem like we're a cult, but that's not what we mean. We just sort of mean that once you publish with us, we want to like stay in touch with you and keep in touch with you and watch you grow and watch you flourish. So one of the best things about this Literary Debutante Ball and about this event tonight is it allows us, you know, to reconnect with writers that we published in the past when they've published their first books. And spread the word to all of our readers who enjoyed your stories when they got in their mailbox, and now they get to buy your books, which is so great. And so you'll come back to us for your next book and your next book, and we'll keep spreading the word. It'll all be really great. So our last reader tonight is Gwen Kirby. So Gwen E. Kirby is the author of the debut collection, Shit Cassandra Saw. Great title. Another great title. She has an MFA from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD from the University of Cincinnati. Her stories have appeared in One Story, Tin House, Guernica, Mississippi Review, Ninth Letter, Smokelong Quarterly, and elsewhere. Currently, she is the Associate Director of Programs and Finance for the Swanee Writers Conference at the University of the South, where she also teaches creative writing. And here's what author Rachel Yoder had to say after reading Gwen's book. As fun as it is furious, Shit Cassandra Saw rewrites womanhood with a cast of complex, contradictory, brave, and bonkers heroines, as likely to skewer you with a cutlass as they are to poorly retile your bathroom. A barn burner of a book that will set you ablaze with its clear-eyed brilliance. Help me welcome Gwen E. Kirby to the virtual stage.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, it's such an honor to be reading after all these wonderful readings tonight. Everyone has been so amazing, and thank you so much to One Story and to Greenlight Books. So I'm going to read a piece of flash fiction from my collection, and I guess the only thing to know, because you can't see it on the page, is that this story is one sentence, and it's called Friday Night. My husband and I should be making a baby, but instead we argue about whether to go out for Mexican or order pizza, each taking our standard positions. He likes the neighborhood Mexican place, damning it as good enough. And me, I know the Mexican place is fine, but good enough is not enough when we could get mediocre pizza at home. And while we're waiting, oh, that's right, I'm ovulating. Let's go. I take off my bra to show I mean business, but he puts on a shoe because lately my husband needs to be in the mood. He needs to feel like sex is about love and us and not just about knocking me up, to which I say, what? Is meaningless sex not hot anymore? And I know knocking women up is a fetish. I've been on Reddit. So imagine me swelling and ripening and bursting with seed like a rotten melon thrown across a field by a trebuchet, spilling its guts across the grass or whatever. I'm not here to tell anyone how to get their dick hard, but I do know I'm losing wood while my husband sits on the couch, one shoe off, one shoe on, saying that we should get out more, to which I say the Mexican restaurant down the street doesn't count as getting out more. And you know what? You only want to go out because you don't want to fuck me. And he says that isn't true, but also do I have to put it like that? And this is when I lose it, because it isn't as though sex has always been about love, about us, about anything other than getting my husband's rocks off. So I wave his other shoe at him and I say, now it's your turn to suck it up like a big girl. And he says, how the fuck am I supposed to get a boner when I'm sucking it up like a big girl? And I say, imagine I'm someone else. Obviously, like, do you even know what sex is? And this is apparently unacceptable, even though, as I said, my egg is on the fucking move like Wile E. Coyote 10 feet past the edge of the cliff, gravity about to ruin his day. And my husband leaves the room and slams the door, and I can hear him say, God damn it. I can hear him get on the phone and order the pizza, a veggie garden delight. And he doesn't ask to add pepperonis on half because he knows that I love pepperonis, and he's pissed off enough to do something petty that when the pizza arrives, there'll be no hiding from. And when he finally comes back into the room, I don't tell him that I heard. He sits beside me on the bed and takes my hand, and it seems he's knocked the wind out of himself, and we bump shoulders. And even as I wonder what we're doing, how we can be allowed to make a baby when we don't qualify for a loan, when we buy our wine from the pharmacy, when we fight and buy clever t-shirts online that we don't need and can't afford, when I'm medicated for depression and he is a chronic nose picker. Yes, even as I think that we are barely clinging to the scab that covers the molten earth, my husband presses me onto my back on our IKEA bed with one leg propped up by books and kisses my face and then my breasts. And it isn't erotic, but it is sweet, and his body is heavy on top of me, and bless him, he is getting his dick hard, thinking about strangers, women who wear latex and pop balloons, and he pushes inside me. In an hour, the pizza will arrive, and we'll open the box, and inside, look, there's the pizza with no pepperonis, and God, whatever we make together, if we make anything together, when we open the box, there's no promise there will even be pepperonis or vegetables. It could be a barbecue chicken pizza, which neither of us like, or a wet mess of Thai noodles, or a fish, dead eyes and cold scales. And why do I want my husband to hold me down on this bed while we wait for the pizza without pepperonis, while he pretends I am someone else and screws his eyes shut and screws into me? But this is what we are doing. And he comes with a whimper and holds me and whispers, I love you, against my hair in that way he always has. And when he leaves to clean himself up, I know he's thinking about the pizza with no pepperonis, wishing he hadn't done that, hoping we can laugh it off, as if I don't know that the pizza is in the oven, is on its way, as if when it arrives, I'll do anything other than eat it, because I often need forgiveness, because I love him. And so when we open that box, I'll roll my eyes at him, smile, but I won't say anything more, won't spoil our dinner with talk about the absence of the pepperoni, about the empty space inside of me that insists without ceasing or reason to be filled, whether we are ready, whether I am ready or not. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks for bringing us home with some sad but hot sex, Gwen. That was fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. What great voices. I mean, it's like everybody read such a short pieces. They're all so different, all so wonderful. Please buy these authors' books, support emerging writers, support first-time writers, buy your books from Greenlight, an independent bookstore which supports emerging writers, which supports people like this, and supports people like One Story, which you can also subscribe to and find out more about. We love you, Greenlight. I love all of you. I'll see you tomorrow night at the Literary Debutante Ball. Amina, good luck with your move. Over to you, Chelsea. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah, for that outro, and thank all of you for such fantastic readings. Thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. And like Hannah said, please support these writers. You can buy their books from Greenlight if you don't already have them. If you're local here to Brooklyn, we're open 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, or you can order online at greenlightbookstore.com. I've dropped the link to all the books in the chat. For pickup at your local store or for shipping anywhere in the US. Thank you all so much again. Debs, have an amazing ball tomorrow night and have a good evening, everybody.